joining me for this episode of the podcast. I'm very grateful to be joined by, in my estimation, when you're talking about combat sports and fight sports, one of the best presenters in the game. He is a presenter for TalkSport and for BT Sport as well, and he is also the co-founder of Fight Disciples alongside Nick Peet. So, Adam, good morning. Thanks very much for the time, man.
Too kind, mate. Too kind with that type of introduction. Cheers, pal.
And I know we spoke previously about the possibility of filming this at the Etihad, and I would love to do that because I know you're a big City fan.
Closet. I'm a closet City fan. I just want to clarify that. I'm personally actually a Blackburn fan, but my little boy, who's 6 years of age, we live in Manchester now, and he doesn't fancy watching and supporting Blackburn because, let's be honest, we're not that good. Even though we're going for playoffs at the moment, mate. But he's become a big City fan. He's a glory hunter. I've no doubt at the end of this season he'll be a Liverpool fan. You know what I mean? You're not kidding about, but yeah, that's where the City things come from.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm still hurting from the other night. Tom Davies hitting the post in the last 10 minutes of that Merseyside derby.
Been a long time for you guys, hasn't it? Been a long time.
10, 11 years now, and I saw your tweet. I remember football being better than this. I was just wondering, as part of sport media, and I suppose as a fan as well, what have you made of this period of sport with no mass gatherings during lockdown?
Yeah, it's weird. I think I put something else out on social media that the UFC have been a million miles ahead of everybody else. I think, and what I meant by that is that we have an expectation, don't we, as an audience of an entertainment level. You know, you're all paying your subscriptions for television, or you're buying your ticket to go to the arena or whatever. And you're doing that because you're expecting to be entertained in some way, shape or form. And I think a lot of other sports, football in particular, has found out how important fans are in arenas. And like, I know that when you're consuming it at home, you can obviously click your button to have fake noise pumped into your house and all this type of stuff. But that doesn't affect what the players are doing. And I suppose even in the UFC, it's still probably at 70 or 80% of what it normally would be, because, for example, if you're going into a last round, the crowd would rally and the guy that's maybe down on the cards would respond to that and you get some mad finish. Boxing's most certainly being affected by it. I don't know if you've seen any of the top rank shows that have been coming out of America. We kick off back in the UK on July the 10th, and they're all studio shows. So I'm a little bit, how's that going to be when you've got a British title fight and someone's down on the cards? Are they going to be able to self-motivate? It's all down to the individual now to be able to self-motivate and get things and push sport on. And we've seen in football over the last week or so, the tempo's just not there, man. There's nobody to hold them to account. It's quite easy to just plod along and have a practice. If there's nothing on the game for you, it's quite easy to just plod along. I'm not going to get injured. I'm not going to get stuck into a big tackle or anything like that. We're just going to crack on. And that Merseyside derby was one of those where, no disrespect to your team, but Liverpool are one of those that are fast out the traps, aren't they? You know, and they just weren't there. They used it in effect as a practice match. I guarantee that if that stadium was full of screaming Scousers from either side, you'd have got some tempo in that game and you'd have got goals. You'd have got something in that match. There's no question about it. So it's most certainly affecting it.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that that game turned out to be the most viewed Premier League game of all time. I think it was like 5.5 million tuning in all round it for a board draw. It's a bit crazy, but something that I wanted to talk about. I'm supposed to be graduating some point this year with a degree relating in sports media, and my final assignment this year was, and I've got this here so I don't screw it up because it's one of them, to examine the political and global effects of a sporting body's commercial interactions with the modern global media.
Jeez, man. You can ask me questions about that. Bloody hell.
but like, obviously, as a Scouser, how I've grown up, like, football is and always will be my first love, you know what I mean? But the thing that jumped out at me to focus my assignment on straight away was the UFC. Like, for an organisation that's, I mean, mixed martial arts as a whole. I mean, I know now it's one of it is, I think, the fastest growing sport in the world. But to have such um, a sort of cynical view of the mainstream media, I think the UFC, it's absolutely incredible how progressive they are in that. And you find examples of that in the deal with the ESPN and over here now the relationship that they've got with BT Sport. I was wondering, as someone that's put a lot of work in to get where you are today, as one of the faces of that relationship with BT Sport, how would you assess the development of covering fight sports in the UFC over time?
UFC, I think, have suffered where, like, when you have a first impression of something, it kind of sticks, doesn't it? It takes a long period of time for then that first impression to be either changed or developed. And if you go back to the early UFC, when there was no rules and it was literally no weight classes and people were just belting the living daylights out of each other, and there was no round structure, so you could be in there scrapping for 30 minutes. When people were told about this and they go watch it, they look at it and they see blood everywhere and all this, automatically that then sends off this signal of danger. Oh, it's brutal. It's human cockfighting. This is outrageous. And they switch off from it. And whenever then there is a reference to, have you seen the UFC? Yeah, I've seen UFC. When did you see the UFC? Well, I saw the UFC years and years and years and years ago, when it first all kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
When Dana and the Fertitta brothers and Zuffa got involved, the way that they have managed to, first of all, get everything regulated to the extent that they've got everything regulated to over in the States. I mean, it was banned in New York up until recently, man, So the amount of work that they've put in from a safety aspect has been outstanding to get it to the level that it's at. Obviously, then the level of competition has gone up because more people have seen that safety aspect.
Mm-hmm.
They're a bit more willing then to let their children start to practice mixed martial arts or some form of mixed martial arts, and therefore the level of competition has gone up. If you look at the early fights, you think to yourself, well, man, this is a bit, you know what I mean? The standard is a bit poor.
Yeah.
But as we're now developing, we're getting guys that are proper, and girls that are rounded mixed martial artists, the most talented fighters on the planet.
Yeah.
And the UFC is the Champions League of that, So that has helped the level of competition. And then you look at it from a business point of view, to buy a business for $2 million and sell it for $4 billion tells you all that you need to know from a commercial aspect, and what the fans, mainly in America, obviously, have come to appreciate. It is the fastest growing sport in the world. It's comfortably, when it comes to viewing figures at the moment, smashing the living daylights out of boxing upon the return of coronavirus. Don't get me wrong, when the likes of a Canelo and the likes of an Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury get it on again, I'm sure those viewing figures will realign. But yeah, man, over the years, it's become a lot easier from my point of view. It's become a lot easier to cover, to justify in the mainstream media. And I think when you get characters like Conor McGregor that come along and cross over, and obviously he dabbled in the world of boxing, didn't he? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he's dabbling in the world of business, and all right, he's had a bad couple of years in the mainstream press, but this year in particular, with the work that he's been doing for Ireland and everything that's going on with the coronavirus, that then looks good. Here in the UK, we got Bisping, who became a world champion. That then puts it on the map again. So yeah, man, it's been hard. Don't get me wrong. When you first tell people, oh, I'm a fan of this, you think, bloody hell, you're a bit of a Neanderthal, you're a knuckle dragger, and all this type of carry on. But over the last year, I would say over the last 5 years in particular, especially in the UK, it's been a lot easier. And BT Sport have been a major factor of that, of being able to push that on.
Yeah, definitely the media strategy that's adopted by the UFC. As I say, it just seems to be really progressive, and I wouldn't go as far as to say access all areas, but in terms of the content that they churn out, they're second to none. How, if at all, could you compare that to football and your experiences within football? Because as I've sort of found out over the last couple of years, it's a bit more secretive, I suppose, in terms of the access that it gives to the media.
It's massively closed off. That's probably one of the the main attractive points for me in fight sports in general, that it is so open. You can, like, bloody hell, I probably got about 5 footballers' telephone numbers in my phone, you know what I mean? And they're all retired. That's how secretive and closed off it is, because football clubs like to control their own media. They've got their own press officers. You've got to go through a certain way in order to speak to somebody. And listen, these are big, multi-global brands that need to protect those brands. Those footballers are representative of those brands. Now, I'm not saying that the fighters aren't representative of the UFC. Of course they are, but they are, in effect, freelancers. They are their own person. Boxers are the exact same thing. They're not representation of the promoters. They are representation of themselves. And I find it a little bit more of a working class sport. I kind of like that. Football since 1992. I know that football existed before 1992. Everton fans will tell me that most certainly. But since 92 and the introduction of all this money that we've had from television, it's got ridiculous over the last few years. It's become an elitist sport. It's away from the working man, you know? There used to be a time when I was a kid anyway that you could just turn up at the training ground and watch your team train, you know? I used to go down local. Blackburn used to train on the local park. It was mad. You used to just go and watch them and, you know, get autographs and all that stuff. You could literally get as close as you possibly could to these guys. They drink in the same bars as you. They'd eat in the same restaurants as you. That's no longer really the case unless you yourself have some type of wealth in order to be able to live that type of life. So it's got away from the working man. Whereas fight sports has never done that. Listen to the words fight sports. It's as earthy.
It's always going to remain rooted, isn't it, in that sort of culture?
Yeah, absolutely. It's as earthy as it comes. These are, and the pay structure in it. A lot of people have this. And there's a lot being talked about, obviously, from the UFC pay structure at this moment. But from a boxing point of view, people see Anthony Joshua, they see Tyson Fury, they know that they're multimillionaires and they're fighting for these crazy purses. But the guys at British level, the guys, you know, that are just starting out, that maybe have just turned over from the Olympics, that have been amateurs for such a long period of time, they ain't millionaires. And when they go out and they fight, and yeah, all right, they're on Sky Sports, wicked. They must be well famous. They must have loads of dough. No, they don't. They're fighting for 10, 15, 20,000 pounds. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but when you've got to pay your manager, you've got to pay your trainer, that 20,000 pounds has also got to sort yourself out because you're not getting another fight for another 3 months. It's pro rata. It all comes into line. So now all of a sudden you're on a normal wage. You're on a 20, 40, 50,000 pound wage for the year. You know what I mean? You're not a multimillionaire.
I know. I suppose that you see these sort of pathways through the likes of McGregor's, and you look at like Jorge Masvidal at the moment and the success that he's achieved. I saw your interview with him earlier in lockdown on a rocking chair wearing a pink Versace robe. You just think, you know, he's fantastic, isn't he?
But look at that. I know that McGregor's a different kettle of fish, right? Because that's super wealth. But the likes of a Masvidal, who's had a fantastic 2019, and the likes of, let's say, an Israel Adesanya, these type of characters who I'm lucky enough to spend a bit of time where you look into their eyes. You can tell real people. You look into their eyes. I get that they're living different lives and they're driving these nice cars and living in these big houses and stuff like that. But fighters are always rooted to real. They've at some point in their life, it's very rare that I'll come across a fighter that has not faced struggle. Real struggle. With all due respect to footballers, and don't get me wrong, they're talented individuals, and rightfully so, they get paid whatever they get paid, fair play to them. But since the age of 8, 9, 10 years of age, the majority of them have had the backsides wiped. They've been in football clubs. They've had everything done for them. They've had all, and again, I don't want to generalise with that because there are footballers out there that have had struggles. I mean, we've seen Marcus Rashford recently speak about that, haven't we? But the majority of fighters, a high percentage of them, a lot of them, they come from poverty. They come from proper struggles, and nobody's handed anything to them. They've had to fight literally tooth and nail for everything that they've had to the point that they're at. And that doesn't leave somebody. You know, it doesn't matter how much dough. Even McGregor's 100 million in bank, right? But what were it? 7 years ago, he's on welfare. That's still weird. Still in the back of his head. he still walks the streets that he used to walk when he was a kid and he was feeling those things. Don't get me wrong, he's far from that life right now, but there's something in his mentality where he understands struggle.
Mm-hmm. And
whereas a lot of footballers and other professionals like that haven't really been in that situation.
Exactly, I say it certainly goes a long way. You only have to go back to like looking at Jorge Masvidal's Kimbo for Slice fights in back gardens and things like that. And I suppose on the theme of that sort of clash of cultures, I had my mate Tom on my last podcast, who also does a handful of sports media stuff with me as well. And he brought up, he said he'd done a placement at the Times one time, and he brought up the sort of, I know it's certainly evident in politics these days, but the concept of a north and south divide. He said that certainly does seem apparent in the likes of football media. And this is where I think, for example, the likes of you and Nick and the success that you've had with Fight Disciples, which speaks for itself, it kind of is a shining example and shows a path to the likes of us that, it's possible to reach the sort of aspiring heights that you've got to. And on that as well, and sort of added to the dynamic, and something that I've loved over these past couple of years is the open mat series that you've been doing on YouTube with Nick and Dan Hardy. Like, Dan is just incredible to listen to at times. Like, his fight IQ is so high and he's so articulate for some of the points that he makes. Like, you wouldn't think he gets punched in the face for a living, you know what I mean? So I was wondering, what is that dynamic like when you add a professional fighter into the mix for you as the host?
It's got to be the right guy. From a media point of view, of course, you've just brought up his strengths there. That guy, every single time I am in his presence, it feels sometimes like I'm at school because I'm learning something every single time. He's that good. And he's also, I think his strength is, even though he's lived in that world and he's traveled the world doing mixed martial arts and he's spent a lot of time around mixed martial artists that are and he'll be all right with me saying this, that are geeks in this game, you know what I mean? Like, proper live, eat, breathe and shit this game. What he's really good at is explaining it to the layman, you know what I mean? Yeah. He's really good at just telling the audience with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever what is going to happen. I mean, there's certain times in commentary when you're watching a fight that Dan's commentating on, that he can predict what's going to happen in about three moves time. And he'll do it in a way where you're then following the action. You're thinking, I feel like I've gained some knowledge. I've gained some insider information from him. So that's his strength, no question, analytics. But we know him off camera. He's a fun dude. You know what I mean? And I know his quirks. Like, for example, I'll crack jokes about his Lego making and all these types of things, right? And I think him being around me and Nick in a more social environment off camera has most certainly helped what we're doing on camera. Mm-hmm. I know what everybody, as the guy that's flying the plane, I know what everybody's strengths are within the team. I know what to throw to X, Y, and Z. And that chemistry and dynamic is very important to make a half-decent television or radio show. You've got to get the characters and the strengths right within the team. And this has gone throughout my whole career. When you first start something off, like, I remember starting in radio when I was about 24, 25, right? And I had this thought process in my head that I could do all this on my own. And don't get me wrong, I've had successful radio programs where it's just been me. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But the very, very best things that I have ever created have always come as part of a team and a strong chemistry with a good dynamic of people. Whether that be me, female co-presenter, producer on a radio show that had that zoo format that bounced off each other. There was a bit of self-deprecation. That's always important, I think. Self-deprecation is massive when you're making a program like what we're making anyway with Open Mat. And once everybody understands that role, and that's the key thing, everybody's got to be on board with their roles, because sometimes you've got to be prepared to give it up for the team. You've got to be prepared to be the butt of the joke. You know, once everybody's on board with that and they're all going in the same direction, they're all trying to achieve the same thing. Like the open mat thing, for example, we're trying to be the number one place that you come to for your MMA content, right? Your UFC content. Where'd you go? Where'd you go for your interviews? Where'd you go for your analytics? Where'd you go for your fun? Where'd you go for learning about this sport? Listen, there's some great outlets out there. In America, you've got your ESPN boys, haven't you, doing their thing. Over in Canada, you've got TSN doing their thing. If you look around the world, MMA Junkie, The Independents, all these types of guys are doing some good stuff. So once you have that plan of this is where we want to go, this is what we want to try and achieve, how do we go about doing it and keep it authentically British? Because you don't want to lie, you don't want to fake it up, right? Who's our gem? Who's our jewel in the crown? Our jewel in the crown's Dan Hardy. That's our jewel, right? Nobody can analyze fights like he analyzes them. So let's play to that. That's our main thing. Boom. There we go. But also, we don't just want him to be a robot, just talking about fights, because Dan Hardy's more than that. Dan Hardy's got a great personality. He's good fun. He's got great crack. So let's show a little bit of that in there as well. I can poke the bear there. And then you've obviously got, if it's just a me and Dan Hardy conversation, that can then get a little bit, not stiff, because it'll never get stiff, but it just becomes samey. Then what you add is that third element of Nick, who is, I mean, I've got to take my hat off to him. He's prepared to play a role in that program, which is only 5 or 10% of his personality. He's a knowledgeable guy. He's been following MMA for such a long period of time. He's edited the biggest mixed martial arts magazine in the world, in Fight Island magazine, right? He's legit when it comes to his stuff. But he's prepared to play the role of the fan in that program in order to throw energy into the show, of which then creates talking points where fans will go, fuck, you know, what's this guy talking about? You know what I mean? But that's good. You want that. You need friction within the program. If you don't have that friction in the program, it's just boring. You need those talking points. So going back to your original point of chemistry, dynamics, and all those types of things, they are the most important. They're the most important thing to make anything successful. You've got to have all that into the pot to make something work. And we're lucky that Dan Hardy's got that. You know what I mean? So away we go.
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, as you say as well, with the likes of Nick, like, without any shadow of a doubt, all three of you do have that sort of essential stone of knowledge, you know, that sort of core base of knowledge that's essential for explaining it to the average Joe or the average viewer. But then you add the sort of element of performance on top of that. And when you get to, like, for example, with Nick, again, if it sort of plays to your point that sometimes you only see 5% and 10% of his knowledge at times, but sometimes it seems like he's spitting pure pro wrestling promos to promote fights. And then when you add that with the sort of dynamic of Dan and yourself, as you say, it's excellent.
But from Nick's point of view, Nick's worked with me now for 4 years, right? And obviously I've been doing radio broadcasting for the best part of 20 years. His background's more print journalism. So therefore he's used to interviewing guys and doing things in a more factual way. Of course, he'd write fun pieces over his time, no question about that. But broadcasting's different, especially if you're broadcasting like what we broadcast. You're trying to create conversations with the people that are viewing. That's what you want, and you want them to interact with you. You want to create emotion in people that are watching or listening. So Nick understands now when a little bit of something just needs injecting into that conversation. Because, for example, and that's another thing as well. You've just said something there. Everybody, I mean, Dan's knowledge is on a different planet. So just leave him out for a second, right? So you've got me and Nick, who have this baseline knowledge of the sport. And we could say a lot of things from a technical aspect or the way that things play out in the world of MMA. But you, as the consumer, you don't want that from me. That's not my role in that job, in the show. It's not really Nick's role in the show. You want Dan Hardy to say that. So having that baseline knowledge is important, because then what you can do is tee Dan Hardy up, or tee your star of the show up to be amazing. You just open the road up for them, and you know they're going to be awesome. You know that they're going to answer the question awesomely, but you've got to put them there rather than it sound all shoehorned in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important part of that dynamic, understanding your role. And going back to what I was just about to say about Nick, is that he understands then because again, of our relationship, when everything becomes safe. For example, if I'm agreeing with Dan, just not for the sake of it, because I genuinely believe it. So I'm, yeah, you're right with that guy. This guy deserves to be here. He deserves a title shot, blah, 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 blah. Nick then now understands, if I agree now, there's no friction in the conversation. So even though I might 50% agree, I'm just going to throw a little bomb into this conversation just to stir something up, right? Boom, there it is. And then all of a sudden you've got a proper conversation going on then. And I'll do the same thing. So you'll find in the show that Dan and Nick, they've got very similar thoughts when it comes to how fights play out, who deserves this, who deserves that, who deserves this. So then I'll play that role of going, all right, it's getting a bit samey. What about this guy? Oh, hang on a minute. And then away, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's just understanding the role and how you can point, because the most important thing is the show. It ain't me. It ain't Nick. And with all due respect, it ain't Dan. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is how you consume the whole thing. And then once everybody understands how that whole thing looks and is being consumed, fucking hell, man, you're onto a winner. It's easy.
Definitely. And a mate of mine who's also been a long time MMA fan. I, self-confessingly, I grew up pro wrestling fan. And when Lesnar made the jump, I think that was around 2009. That's when my sort of attention just went and shifted. So I've been following the sport for quite some time. And just on the topic of Dan Hardy, is he getting back in there with a certain Anthony Pettis anytime soon? Because I know that long before that was rumoured, my mate had always had that in me, that he's going to get back in there with Anthony Pettis.
I don't know whether it'll be Pettis. He's mentioned Pettis' name. He's mentioned Cowboy's name. Listen, Dan has and always will be a fighter. That's what he is. In his heart, it was his life as a kid. He's obviously hit the heights of professional fighting, and it came to a premature end because of health reasons. He's now fixed. He's now sorted. I think he's got a top life, and he enjoys everything that he's doing when it comes to punditry and commentating and making content. He's loving all that. But he's watching these dudes in the octagon, and he's licking his lips, He's getting it knuckles. He fancies it, man. He's training hard. So I would be gobsmacked if we don't see him fight again. I don't know who it will be, but I'll be gobsmacked if we don't see him fight again. At least once.
Yeah. My mate 30 is, because he's grown his mohawk out a bit more, that's right, when he's looking like he's going to jump back in there. But I'd say...
There's a Twitter account called Mohawk Watch, and they keep tagging me in all this random stuff going, when's he back? And I'm like going, mate, tag him, ask him. He's the guy that makes the decision. I just make a TV program with him. I tell you what though, when he does make that decision, and if it is on, think of the TV shows we could make, man. It'd be absolutely amazing documenting that road back.
Yeah, that'd be great. I certainly look forward to that. And for yourself, like, for example, when I look at like certain presenters or certain interviewers, like you can look at what their equivalent of what a fighter's record is. For example, you look at the likes of Anthony Pettis, and you just, when you think of Anthony Pettis, I think he's former WEC champion, and he's just like, he's fought the who's who of mixed martial arts. You name it, he's been in there with them, like Cowboy, like, Wonder Boy, anyone, he's been in there. And for yourself, some of the interviews that you've had down the years, mate, have been absolutely fantastic. As I said before, Masvidal, McGregor, Fury, like, and then you look at like the boxing, Terence Crawford, Ricky Hatton, who's one of my childhood heroes. Have you got any memories of certain interviews that stick out more than most?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know something? The ones that I get a kick out of are the ones that nobody else has been able, getting things out of fighters that nobody else has been able to get. Like, for example, you just mentioned a few there, right? And don't get me wrong, it's a absolute pleasure to be in Conor's company, Tyson Fury's company, and to just shoot the breeze and talk for any length of time. But those two characters in particular that I've just mentioned, they're an interviewer's dream, mate. If you can't get anything out of them, then you shouldn't be interviewing them, because Conor can talk the hind legs off a donkey, as can Tyson Fury. They'll give sound bites. They're just brilliant. The guys that are that are less media trained, the guys that don't really like doing media. You mentioned Terence Crawford there, right? There's a good example. Terence doesn't really like doing media, right? He just wants to fight. He just wants to knock people's heads off. And I get that. These are fighters. They're not media dudes. So someone like a Terence, for example, you don't get gold straight away. You don't get that interview where people go, wow, straight away. That takes just a tiny little bit of time of off camera, building relationship. They need to be, anybody that you interview has to feel comfortable in your presence. That's the first thing that is required. They've got to think, all right with this guy. This guy's not going to try to stitch me. He's not looking for a sensationalist headline. He's not going to pull my pants down here and I'm going to end up in the media tomorrow and all hell's going to kick off, right? So that's the first thing. And once you've established that moment of that comfortable moment, your job then, and again, a lot of interviews, I watch a lot of guys and they try and make it about them. They try and make the interview, it ain't about you, mate, right? So you as the consumer are wanting to hear from the subject, Conor McGregor, Tyson Fury, Terence Crawford, whoever it is, right? You've gone on YouTube, you've typed in their name. You ain't typed in my name. You've typed in their name. You go, oh shit, there's a Conor McGregor interview here. Let's have a read it. Let's have a watch of this. Bang. You're there for Conor McGregor. So my job is to give you the best Conor McGregor. That's it. That's the whole job. Once that person is comfortable with me, my job is to give you the best version of that human being. Now, a lot of it will be positive, but there'll be certain moments in that conversation where you've got to talk about something negative, maybe. But that is okay because you've already established that moment of being comfortable.
Yeah.
You're comfortable at the start. And of course, when you're talking about the names that you mentioned, I can completely understand that some people in that situation would be nervous or they'd be intimidated because of the stature of this particular star. But what you've got to do in your own head is establish they're just a human being. And this is maybe a fight sports thing, going back to what we said right at the start of this, of where their roots are at, where they have been through real life, the real human beings that have just become incredibly successul. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that conversation, always in my head with fighters, whether they be boxers or MMA stars, is easy. It doesn't matter who they are. It's just an easy conversation. It's just me and you, and we're celebrating you. That's it. That's all we're doing, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. That's all I can really say. Your job is basically to get the best out of that person that you're speaking to. That's it.
Yeah, I think, for example, with the rise of, say, the likes of your YouTubes and your podcasts, for example, at the moment, like, and something that the UFC are exceptionally good at, and you've got a few boxing personalities as well in there, I suppose, but they are excellent at expressing themselves through the likes of media. You know, if you look at the likes of post-career, the likes of Michael Bisping, who've gone on to like punditry, and DC as well. I think DC is absolutely fantastic at it, excellent at it. Some sort of shine in that context, whereas others, as you say, you've got to really look at attacking the conversation from different angles to get sort of unique answers if that's not their usual forte, or if it's something that they don't fancy.
Yeah. Just somebody else that I want to mention as well, right? You just said, is there an interview that sticks out in your mind? Yeah, there's loads, right? There's tons, and all for different positive reasons. But one particular guy, right, that I love having a conversation with is Israel Adesanya. And the reason for it, you just said something there about people that understand media and how to use media in order to send your career to the next level. I have never been in a conversation with Israel Adesanya where I have dictated the conversation, and I'm the interviewer. That's weird. That's a weird dynamic. I go in there fully prepared of what I want to talk to Izzy about, right? Izzy takes control of the conversation because he's already gone in his head. He's thinking to himself, right, I know who I'm speaking to. I know this guy. I know what platform he's on. I know how many people are going to see this, right? I want to go in this direction. And the reason why I want to go in this direction is because I'm searching for greatness in the octagon. That's what I'm searching for. And I know that if I say X, Y, and Z here, that then gains traction, not just with this guy, but with all these other people. Then the fighter that I'm kind of subliminally talking about might see that. And we might then end up in a situation where we're fighting, for example, Yoel Romero or whatever his plan is. Israel Adesanya is a guy that absolutely takes full control of a conversation. And that for me, superstar shit. To understand that, I mean, we know how talented he is. I mean, look how good he is in the octagon. He's phenomenal, right? But there's loads of phenomenal fighters. Fighting comes in two aspects. What you do in the octagon, what you do on the microphone. They go hand in hand. You've got to rock them both in order to become the elite. Look at all the very biggest names, the guys that are in the biggest door. Look at all those guys and girls. They do both. They do both. They rock that. And Israel Adesanya is the guy that every time I'm in his presence, you ask him a question, stick that microphone on his face, and he's like, I'm not talking about that today. We're talking about this. And off he goes. You're thinking, yeah, all right, man. I'll ride this conversation out. Let's go. But then that's another thing as well. So many people go into interviews with preconceived ideas of the questions that they're going to ask, and they try to stick to that so rigidly. No, don't do that. That's not what you should do. Of course, prepare and say, right, what do I want to get out of him today? And you prepare X, Y, and Z. You've got a list of questions. Try never to read those questions because you'll get distracted from the actual conversation. If you watch everything that I've done, especially with BT Sport, I never have anything with me. I'm just sat there talking. And the night before, what I'll do, I'll sit there, I'll write out the angles of what I want to go down with the conversation. And I'll try and memorize it. That's what I'll just keep going and keep thinking, right, okay, this is where we want to go. This is where we want to go. Yep, cool. Bang, 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 bang. And if you live this sport and you love this sport, you know these dudes inside out anyway. You know them. So I try to keep that in my head. Don't have any notes. I don't want to look at any notes. I want to look into their eyes. And then the most important thing that you do is listen. Listen to what they say. That's where the conversation is. It's like when you're in the pub with your mates, you don't have preconceived questions of what you're going to talk about, do you? You sat there, your mate will say something, you've listened to it, you'll respond to that. And that's what you should do in an interview, you know? So, for example, when Israel Adesanya throws my script out the window and he goes, nah, man, I'm not interested in that. I'm talking to you about what I want to talk about. Listen. Listen to what the dude's saying and then challenge X, Y, and Z. And then you have a conversation.
Yeah, I suppose that's what makes great interviewers so great, is that understanding of the elements, as I say again, of performance on the microphone, especially for fighters. And obviously I wasn't alive and there to see Muhammad Ali, who I regard as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. But I can see parallels to when Izzy's on the microphone and to what Ali sort of laid the foundations of, if you know what I mean.
Imagine, I mean, I'm jealous of those older guys that spent any time in Muhammad Ali's company when he was fighting, when he was doing his thing. And you watch the old videotapes and you think, you got to think at the time as well. Nobody, he was the original. He rubbed everybody up the wrong way with all the things he was saying, but he still did it. He kept going. That is special. Like I was just saying there, that's superstar stuff.
Yeah, and that's it. That in my opinion, that's why I regard him as simply as the GOAT. I think the cultural context of what he was doing, you know, speaking out about issues that are, you know, rearing their head again today, and they're still so prevalent. Like his attitude and the fact that he got taken, he wasn't allowed to compete from the age of the 25 to 29, which is regarded as an athlete's prime. That makes me feel very sad and angry, to be honest, because you could only imagine what he would have gone on to showcase in that time. Who do you regard as your GOAT? I see you've got your Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward trilogy fight.
Oh yeah, got that on today. What have we got on the wall as well? We've got that famous fight behind me there of Tyson Fury doing Wilder in the second fight.
Nice.
What else we got? Top there, I've got Tyson against Berbick. And then, of course, you got Muhammad Ali behind me as well. If you can see that. There.
That's cool, man. That's so cool.
Listen, the guy, like you've said it, it's Muhammad Ali. Everything about what Muhammad Ali did in the ring. Look at the body of work first of all. That's what you do as a fight guy. You look at the body of work. Who did he fight? He fought everybody. Beat some, lost some, came back. Like as you just said, spent a period of time out the ring because of everything that was going on with the army and his thought process of Vietnam. Listen, and then you look at what he was doing on the microphone. Then you look at what he was doing for society. Then you look at everything that he did post-career. There's only one, mate. There's only one, isn't there? You know what I mean? Anybody that refers to themselves as the GOAT and they don't mention Muhammad Ali above him is just weird. He's the guy.
I mean, you always get the argument of Floyd, and I think technically you can't go wrong if you're talking from a purely, you know, boxing as
Floyd's
a sweet science. Yeah,
Floyd is the best businessman that this sport has ever seen. Now, a lot of people have a go, like they talk about his intelligence all the time, don't they? But look at what that dude has done, and don't get me wrong, he's got a good team around him. He understood the value of being undefeated. He understood it, and he's created this whole new culture around it, where everybody's obsessed with undefeated records in the world of boxing. I'm so happy that MMA doesn't have that. But in the world of boxing, you can sell that off. Once he beat Oscar De La Hoya to become the pay-per-view guy, he even changed the way he fought in order to maintain that zero. Because Pretty Boy Floyd was a killer, man. He was knocking dudes out for fun. Fantastic to watch. I encourage anybody listening to this, go and watch Floyd Mayweather's first 20-odd fights. He's amazing. His last 20-odd fights, and don't get me wrong, some unbelievable names on that list. Yeah, he can sometimes be a little bit dull, a little bit boring, a little bit defensive. But in his head, he was that good. He's thinking, well, I can just beat this guy on the back foot. So I'll do that because it preserves the zero and it puts another 50 million in my bank account. Fair play to the dude, man. The best businessman we've seen. Yeah. And now we've got Conor, haven't we? Connor's doing a very similar thing. He's following the Floyd Mayweather vibe.
Yeah. Well, from the world of MMA, who would you regard as the GOAT in that respect? Like, I know a lot of people say Amanda Nunes, and you know, rightfully so if you look at her body of work. But I'm just wondering from yourself.
Wow, Amanda Nunes, without any shadow of a doubt, is the best female fighter that we've seen. Everything that she's achieving right now, she's cleaned up 2 weight divisions. Just the way just the way that the female game has developed as well. I mean, when Ronda came on the scene, she was the original, yeah. But it was one trick thing. It was just, I'm just going to rip your arm off. Then Ronda got giddy and thought that she could stand up and start whacking with people, and she got found out. Amanda Nunes can do everything. If you want to go on the mat, we'll go on the mat. If you want to stand up and throw down, cool. If you want me to fight bigger girls, I'll fight bigger girls. She could do it all. And I'm a little bit worried now, actually, as to where she goes. What happens now? Because she's cleaned up. Does she go into movies? Does she go and fight someone like a Clarissa Shields? I don't know. I don't know the answer for her because there's not enough talent to give her a challenge, in my opinion, right now, because she is the queen. And you're right. She is most certainly in that conversation. She'd be on my Mount Rushmore anyway, right now. Who's the all-time GOAT? This is. I'd probably go GSP.
Would you?
That's probably where I'd go, and the reason for it. I mean, Nick's gonna have a go at me now because he's all about John Jones. Right?
Yeah, I'm a John Jones advocate for GOAT.
Yeah, but I'd probably go GSP right now, answering this question today, because of the multiple weight category thing. Okay. He came back, he beat Bisping at middleweight to become champ again. His run at welterweight was absolutely outstanding. If Jones goes and becomes the heavyweight champion, come and ask me the question again, right? Because what he did when he kicked off that light heavyweight run where he was slaying all the very, very, very best that has ever been was outrageous. It was unreal. If he can go up to heavyweight and he can become the heavyweight champion of the world, then it's a different conversation. But yeah, I right now I'd probably say GSP's the GOAT. Okay. That's a fair shout. I really want to see that Adesanya Jones fight, man. I just, like, stylistically, what more could you ask for from a mixed martial arts fight? Do you want to see that more than you want to see Jones fighting Ngannou? I can understand Jones's trepidation as to going up to heavyweight, though. You know, like, if you catch a left hook from Francis Ngannou, it's night, innit? You know what I mean? But with Adesanya, just that stylistic matchup fascinates me so much. Yeah. If, by the way, on the GOAT conversation, if Henry Cejudo comes back and beats Alex Volkanovski, he's my guy. Might be a British thing, but the triple cringe thing is. Oh, mate, don't get me wrong. Yeah, he's my man. There's no question about it. But if he comes and he wins at featherweight, as well as obviously what he's done in the low weight categories, shit, bad, man, unbelievable. Of course. And I don't know, we touched on it briefly before, in sort of just all the sort of elements that are active within the environment of boxing. I was watching one of Rogan's podcasts lately, and he brought up like a really interesting point in that. Obviously, we had Floyd and Pacquiao in 2015. Many fight fans put the argument forward, you know, the pair of them were past the best at the time that fight took place. I think Rogan put the argument forward that if they were both mixed martial artists within the UFC, that fight would have happened whilst they were in their prime and probably several times over. I know, as you say, there are so many different like sort of sub-facets of boxing that make, you know, negotiations hard, you know, from broadcast partners to, you know, the deals that they make. But would you agree with that in terms of that sort of critique on boxing? Yeah, I think that's the biggest frustration for a lot of fight fans, and that is probably why the UFC is the fastest growing sport in the world. It's benefiting from the politics of boxing, isn't it? You know, there's so many great fights, so many great boxers that just don't meet each other, and it is down to sanctioning bodies, it's down to promoters, it's down to broadcasters. There's too many people eating off the plate that need their slice, rather than just the fighters. Whereas in the UFC, and people will slag this, and listen, it's a whole different conversation about fighter pay and various things like that, of course. But once you have got, we're the sanctioning body, we're the promoter, all one person, everything then becomes a lot easier, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And that's why the UFC has, without any shadow of a doubt, grown to the heights that it has grown, because it, more often than not, you are getting the best out fight the best. Every single year you are getting blockbuster fights in any weight category. Boxing fans are frustrated. Like, for example, you look at welterweight division. Look at all that talent in that welterweight division, but a lot of it's on Al Haymon and the PBC promotional side. You've got Terence Crawford at top rank. You know, all the animosity of previous years between certain fights, for example, Mikey Garcia and Bob Arum, they'll probably never work together. You think to yourself, geez, man, we're missing out on so many unbelievable fights just for bullshit political reasons. You look at the situation in the heavyweight division, you've got obviously Anthony Joshua on one side, you've got Tyson Fury on another. And I know that they've recently said, oh, we've agreed to this 2-fight thing. Well, hang on a minute. It's all right saying that you've agreed to this 2-fight thing. If that happens in the UFC, for example, the heavyweight championship of the world, we've agreed to fight. Wicked. When's it happening? It's happening in a month, right? DC, Stipe are going at it again for a third time. Fucking hell, right. Great. Super. Everybody's buzzing, right? They come out on social media, they say they've agreed it. It's happening within a period of time. In boxing, right, we've agreed to these 2 fights for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. When's it happening? Don't know. Where's it happening? Don't know. Well, hang on a minute. What about this mandatory? Yeah, we might have to deal with that first. All right, okay. What about this rematch? Yeah, we're definitely going to have to deal with that first. Okay. What TV channel are you putting it on? We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
Look at all that. No wonder boxing fans just go, give me a shout when you've got some news, man. It's just, you know, and that's the biggest frustration. Covering boxing when you cover UFC, it's even more frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you see how easy it is. You see, I'm used to now sitting in the world of UFC going, well, that fighter and that fighter should fight. And then about a month later, the UFC have announced that fight's happening. You're thinking, oh, this is good. I kind of know what I'm talking about. This is amazing. Right? And then you go into the world of boxing, you go, well, that guy and that guy should fight because we need to know who the best is in that division. And then 5 years later, you're still talking about the same thing. It's mad.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And just to sort of to round it all up now, there's a fantastic matchup this weekend that I literally don't even need to see a promo for. I think the fight just sells itself. The headliner, Dustin Poirier against Hooker, and then the co-main, you've got Darren Till's their best mate, Mike Perry. Yeah, this is a good card. And then Fight Island as well coming up, which has had so much build-up and animosity around it. You looking forward to it?
Yeah, of course, man. You look at Fight Island and what the UFC have attempted to do here. You need to do something in these crazy times to kind of rubber stamp it and signpost the moment, because it isn't normal. There's no, as we spoke right at the start of this, there's no fans in there. Things are different. When you switch the TV on, it does feel different when you're watching certain stuff. So what can we do in order to make things, to signpost that and to signify, listen, we're in crazy times. Let's do something a little bit mad. We're going to do Fight Island. And obviously it's a wonderful opportunity for those international fighters that can't get into America to fight because, as you know, if you don't fight, you're not getting paid. As I said right at the start of this, there's people, these are normal people, mortgages, rents to pay, mouths to feed. They've got to be in the octagon. They've got to be doing their thing. And if you look at it from a British fan's point of view, Fight Island from the 11th of July through to the 25th of July, the amount of British talent that is going to be out there doing their thing. And they're not in knockovers either. They're not in just little tickles. They're in proper fights, legit fights that are actually progressing people's careers. If you look at that one on the 25th between Till and Whittaker, and you look at the landscape of the middleweight division, you look at Adesanya as the champion, you think, right, he's going to fight Paulo Costa, right? That's probably where that's going to go. What's next? Well, the former champ's there, Whittaker, and you've got this young buck that's coming through that's absolutely giving it everybody on social media. Surely the winner of that would be then the one after Paulo Costa. So that's the beauty of where the UFC are at right now, and especially with Fight Island, is that they're making fights that actually have progression. Again, referring back to boxing. Boxing at the moment is in this state of just ticking over, just existing. There's no real juice there for us all to get stuck into. Where's the fights right now? they're talking about Lomachenko and Lopez. If that gets made, brilliant. That's a great fight. Let's all get excited about that. That's fantastic. But at the moment, on a day-to-day basis, you know, there's nothing there. You just made a reference to Poirier and Hooker this weekend. Now, in the grand scheme of things, in that lightweight division, the winner of that probably doesn't jump ahead of the queue of anybody else. Conor is retired. We live in Conor's world. If Conor wants a lightweight title shot, once Habib and Justin have sorted their beef out, then Conor will probably get it. Tony Ferguson, even though he's just been defeated badly off Justin Gaethje, he's still probably ahead of both of these two guys that are fighting this weekend. What it does do this weekend, though, is if you lose, you go to the back of the queue of a really stacked division. So there's something riding on it. It's a great fight, as you said. It's a wonderful matchup. You know, I can't wait to see it. But there is something riding on it. There's something riding on every single fight that we're seeing that the UFC are making. And Fight Island, I mean, to kick off with 3 world title fights, man. Jesus. Think about that. We're in a lockdown, global pandemic, and there's 3 world title fights on the same night.
I know.
Madness.
Something else. Certainly exciting times. Adam, I really want to thank you for the time. It's meant a lot, and it's been really interesting to pick the brains, as I say, one of the best presenters in the game. Adam Catterall on social media, Fight Disciples, anything else that you want to promote and get out there?
Nah, man.